Although it's difficult to imagine today, Cincinnati once endured a year-long reign of terror as 5 dynamite explosions rocked the Queen City. The first explosion occurred on May Day 1908 at the Phoenix Club on Race Street. The bomb attached to the main entrance detonated when bartender Fred Bugle was closing up for the night. Luckily for Bugle, the infernal machine was crudely fashioned, and it blew out at the ends rather than exploding in the middle as intended. Bugle was seriously injured, but the shrapnel actually scattered sideways instead of into his body, and he survived. The new Harrison Avenue viaduct wasn't even finished on August 6th of 1908 when someone tried to blow it up. The explosion didn't go as planned though. Damage to the steel pillars was minimal and the shattered concrete base was easily replaced. Construction on the Cincinnati Southern Railroad Bridge to Ludlow, Kentucky was interrupted by 2 explosions in May of 1909 and a third in August of that year. Although harm to the railroad bridge was negligible, destruction to nearby buildings in the West End was extensive, with hundreds of windows blown out and a couple of tenements sustaining structural damage. The tenants, although badly frightened, were not hurt, and there were thankfully no injuries. Suspicion fell on radical union organizers, with all of the explosions having some connection to non-union contractors or anti-union bosses. The suspicions proved correct. The ringleaders of this campaign of terror were the McNamara brothers, John and James, staunch union organizers who grew up in Cincinnati's North Side neighborhood. After their attacks in Cincinnati had little effect, the McNamara brothers relocated to the West Coast and joined an ongoing campaign to unionize Los Angeles. The California unions met fierce opposition from Harrison Gray Otis, owner of the LA Times newspaper. Although the entire business community in Los Angeles was opposed to unions, Otis and the Times presented the snarling public face of anti-union sentiment. The McNamara brothers concocted a plan to shut down the LA Times, and it was James McNamara himself who planted dynamite outside the newspaper building. The explosion on October 1st, 1910 did little damage itself, but it ignited a fire that destroyed the building, killed at least 21 employees, and injured another 100. Both McNamaras were arrested and found guilty and sentenced to prison. James got life in San Quentin prison, where he remained until his death. John served 10 years.
All right, this left us with more questions. Greg Hand, the man behind Cincinnati Curiosities, joins us now with some answers. So, Greg, good morning. Why did these union organizers resort to violence?
Well, this is back in the day when there were no union negotiations. If you decided to start a union, the big companies brought out armies and they killed you. And so violence was going on both sides. And so the bombing was just a different form of the real armed conflict that people were engaging in at the time, and it occurred throughout the United States.
Now, okay, so that's across the country. Why was Cincinnati a target?
In fact, Cincinnati was just one of many targets. The year that we focused on, where there were 5 explosions in Cincinnati, there were more than 100 explosions that took place across the United States, largely by the same organization.
Wow. All right, so the explosions obviously make a big bang, but why were they ineffective?
This is the interesting thing. You know, back at that time, you just couldn't pop on Google and find out how to dynamite something. And so these folks who were trained to build bridges and that sort of thing would get the dynamite and really didn't know how to use it. And so they would lay it out in the rain and the fuse would stop burning. They would put it on top of something when they should have put it on the bottom. They were apparently very good union organizers, very good bridge builders, but very terrible dynamiters.
Wow. Go figure. Well, it was in the days before Wile E. Coyote who could have shown him how it works.
Exactly.
Well, Greg Hand, as always, thanks so much for being with us today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.